Well, welcome today to the Foxstone Financial Wealth Matters Show. I am extremely excited to have an author. It's cool to say, right?
It is really cool.
Yeah. I'm excited to have an author here, and I'm not going to do any of the introductions. I want her to do it. But again, this is the Foxstone Financial Wealth Matters Show, and as you know, in this show, if you've been watching our channel and watching some of the other videos that we've done, we like to have lots of guests in here. Guests that have an impact on people's lives. And as you will see today in our conversation, that we are definitely going to be talking about being centered in the proper headspace. But before we get too deep, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Great. Thanks for having me here today, Christian.
Absolutely.
My name is Marisa Jones.
Yep.
And I am the author of The Lotus Tattoo.
The author.
The author.
Wow.
Great title.
I know. Tell me about it.
So, The Lotus Tattoo was something that I just started writing about a year and a half ago. And wasn't sure why I was writing it.
Mm-hmm.
I had started writing a few books in the past. My first book was actually in the 1980s, and it was how to build a 386 computer.
Oh, wow.
So it goes way back. My attempts of book writing have started and stopped many times over the years. But last year was really different. I was in my nutritionist's office, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and she prompted me to tell my story about food.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a very Sicilian household. My mom cooked everything from scratch, and we grew our own food and vegetables. And I had food allergies that had exacerbated later in life, and so I converted all her recipes to paleo and gluten-free. And she wanted me to share that with the class, and so she says to me in the class, "Why don't you have a great story to tell?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me your story. Tell the class the story about your food." And I went home that night, and I started thinking, and I thought, I've had an incredible journey in this life.
Yeah.
And I have a much better story to tell. And so I started writing my memoir at that point.
Just like that.
Just like that.
That was the catalyst.
That was the catalyst.
The food.
That was the food.
The food was the catalyst.
Yeah, I love food.
Oh.
And it was a great catalyst because they really, she and the rest of the team at the doctor's office they've been really instrumental in getting my physical health in back up to par, and I had already been focusing on my mental health.
Yeah.
So it really just kind of tied it all together, and I just felt like I was in a really good spot to start writing my story.
Yeah. All right, quick tangent. So then how does your paleo gluten-free Sicilian Italian food compared to the original?
It's awesome.
Is it?
It's pretty darn close.
That's amazing.
It's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who just can't tell the difference.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a whole nother topic then for another
Italian
day.
biscotti, pizza, pasta.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
Really?
It's great.
Wow. That's a whole nother book.
It sure is. Well, I actually have recipes available on my website, but I am working on another book for next year, which will be my recipes.
Really?
Yeah, a cookbook.
Wow. Okay. Well.
When I find the time.
Yeah, when you find the time. Well, let's talk about your story.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about your story, or tell us a lot about your story. But I want to know, obviously the food, the catalyst, your nutritionist was the catalyst to write this book, but what's the book about? And why did you feel this impetus to write it? And I mean, what's the point of the book? What are you trying to get across to the audience?
So when I wrote the book, I wasn't really sure who I was writing it for. I just
Mm-hmm.
felt like I had to tell my story. And I had spent most of my life hiding behind a lot of secrets.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a Sicilian household with an alcoholic father, and I was exposed to physical child abuse. And then in my 20s, I did a lot of drugs and alcohol. And I kind of started going down the wrong path. And all of my life decisions were based on a victim mindset. And I went through infertility, I went through divorce, and all of these decisions in my life were always based on the fact that I was a victim.
Yeah.
And it really caught up to me about 10 years ago. I was 45 years old and sleeping in a fetal position in my own house. And I was suffering from PTSD. And I started drinking alcohol again, and I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night. My young kids were in the other room, crying or laughing. I couldn't get myself to go see them. My mom lived with me, thankfully, and she helped me with the kids during that time. But I was living in fear. I was living in fear, and there was nothing to be fearful of. And I had everything I needed. You know, I had a great career. I was financially stable. I had, you know, my mom's support, friends and family around me. But mentally, I was a mess.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to reach out for help, but I was really afraid to take that step, you know, because most of my life I was taking care of myself, and I was surviving. And then I realized that it wasn't enough at that point. I couldn't take care of myself anymore. And so I knew I needed to make a change. But again, that whole fear of being exposed, you know, the whole stigma of mental health, you know, she's crazy. What, you know, you're afraid to reach out. And so I felt completely alone, and decided to go on a self-help journey. And so I started researching, and, you know, I'm an IT specialist, so I started Googling and researching, and I took it on like a project, and started reading about meditation and yoga and hypnotherapy and, you know, food choices, and just about everything to find peace and balance. And my goal was to see if I could be happy, to like really feel what it was like to be happy. And it was pretty successful, because here I am 10 years later, and my life is completely different.
Yeah. Total 180.
Yeah, total 180.
Okay. So now you think that the point of the book is not that, you know, this is not the secret to happiness.
It's not a self-help book.
Okay.
So when I was writing the book, one of the things that I kept going back to was I wanted to make sure that I highlighted the mental mindset that I was in. So from the time I was a child until today, I really talk about the thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, I go through and I recreate the thoughts that were in my head during those times, because I wanted people to understand that, you know, I thought I was crazy. There were so many times I questioned my mental health and my mental state because of my thoughts.
Like, at what age?
Ever since I was young.
Oh, really?
3, 4, 5. I questioned God. I questioned my faith. I questioned whether I was a good child or a bad child, because my dad always told me I was a bad child. And then I would fight with myself in my head going, what do you mean? I'm just a child. And then the other part of me would be, well, maybe I am bad, you know, and I would question that. And so, you know, all of that kind of built up. And I took that out on a lot of people. You know, the subtitle of the book is From Bully to Redemption. One woman's grit from bully to redemption. And the reason is because I took out all of my anger and all of my frustrations and all of my mental health issues on everyone else.
So you were the bully.
I was a bully. So
you went from being bullied to being the bully.
Right. So I took all of the anger and the abuse that my father gave to me, and I took it out on other kids, and that I never grew out of that. In my 20s, there's a scene in my book where I talk about where I basically got my ass beat because I got into an altercation of road rage. Really? Yeah, big time. I was in my 20s. I was living in the Bronx, and I couldn't keep my mouth shut.
Really?
Yeah, and then when no one helped me, I started yelling and bullying the people on the street. So, it's very, very different. But
very different.
No one would have ever guessed, because I always held my life together on the inside, you know, and you know, had a career. I was successful. I was functioning. Yeah. And then when I was going through my bad, you know, 10 years ago, when I was going through my really
kind of the low point.
The low point.
Yeah.
You know, I call it my mental breakdown, but it's not what you think of what typically somebody has a mental breakdown. I was bullying my own kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I wasn't physically beating them, but I was yelling and screaming and just instilling the same fear in them that my dad did to me, and I couldn't break the cycle. And so when I was writing the book, I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to bring the mental aspect of it to let people know that there's nothing wrong with them. Whether their thoughts are positive or negative or good or bad, there's nothing wrong with them. It's an issue that needs to be addressed, but it doesn't mean they're crazy. It doesn't mean they're not a good person. It doesn't mean that, they should still live in fear and hiding of who they are. They need to reach out and get help. And that's what I started learning about myself when I was going through reading the book. That's what I wanted to project. That's really what I wanted to get out to the audience of who I was writing it for. I wanted to touch people who were in the same position I was 10 years ago and let them know that they need to get help, and there's nothing wrong with reaching out.
Yeah. That's why therapists are around, right? That's why they go to school.
Exactly.
That's why they're trained professionals.
Right.
So what can you attribute your biggest change to? I mean, from that point 10 years ago till now, what is it? A series of things? Is it 5 things, 10 things, 3 things? What has been the biggest change in your life that you've seen as you've gone through this own personal journey from bully to redemption?
So I think the biggest change would be I had to change my mindset as to how I perceive things, my belief systems, everything from my faith to my belief in other people, just my belief in what I used to think was my foundation of beliefs. I had to completely rip it apart. So the book actually is broken out into 3 phases. There's, the first half is all talking about the victim, and then it goes through a transformation. So all the tools and resources that I use to help me get through the transformation. And it's not an easy process. It's one of the things is it's an up and down cycle, and you have to stick up with it. You really have to trust the process, no matter who you bring in to help you. And then ultimately it goes through a phase called mindful shifts. And the mindful shifts is what I perceive as my breaking the old belief system. Yeah. And so a lot of things that I had to change in my belief system, I think, was the biggest thing. Again, everything from my faith as to my belief in myself and who I was. I had to break that cycle, that I was not a bad person because of my thoughts. I was not a bad person because of what somebody else told me. Yeah.
All right. So now I think hopefully our listeners are getting why I brought you in, right? This is the Foxstone Financial Wealth Matters show, and you can't be in the right space to be able to achieve your other goals without being centered, right? And having a clear focus on who you are and what it is that you're trying to achieve in the future if you're not even happy with yourself, right?
That's absolutely right.
So that is why I brought you in. And this is a phenomenal book, and very, very happy for you. So out of everything that's happened, right, over the last 10 years, I mean, what was the moment that you just said, this is going to have an impact on people's lives?
It was when I was writing the book. I started to slowly tell people my story. I let the skeletons out of the closet, and I started telling people my story. Was that a
cathartic experience? As you, like, each skeleton that kind of came out of the closet, you just felt this huge weight off your shoulders?
It wasn't a weight. It was more of an awakening. Okay. It was their reaction to me, not necessarily how I felt, because I was very comfortable with it at this point, and I was very comfortable talking about it. But it was more their reaction to me was so inspiring, because so many people started opening up to me and telling me their stories. Similar stories, and people that I would have never guessed.
Really?
Colleagues, friends, family. Everyone just started taking their demons out of the closet, and they would tell me things like, "You're the only person who knows this. My wife doesn't even know this," or "I've been in and out of rehab for years, and no one at work knows this," or I was just at a therapist today because I was bullying my own kids, and I'm having some issues at home. And across the board, everything, my story is unique. I have had a lot of stuff happen to me, and across the board, somebody has something that resonated with them. And so as I started telling my stories and telling the book, it just kept fueling my passion to keep writing it. And I knew there was something, I knew there was something important about what I was doing, and it just kept me going.
So did you know that it was going to strike chords with so many different people?
No, I had no idea.
You had no idea?
I had no idea. When I wrote it, I was writing to someone like myself who I didn't really know how to box into something, right? I didn't have a label. And one of the first editors that I had hired, she said, "Who's your muse? Who are you writing for?" And I didn't really know offhand.
You just hold up a mirror and you're like,
right, it's me.
Yeah, it's me.
But then the first thing that came to mind was the Ravsten Center, which is it's a community of resources here. They opened in 2016, and they do support services for domestic violence victims. And I kept thinking about someone who would walk through the doors of that place, because I never had the guts to do that. And so someone who would walk through the doors of that place, what would I tell them? So I rewrote, after my first draft, I rewrote the book as if I was telling it to somebody who was doing that. And what I didn't realize was that not only does it reach individuals who are just coming out of abuse, it's reaching individuals, just so many people, because we're impacted by trauma on a regular basis, and we don't even realize it's trauma until we're older and we're at the therapist talking about it, right? Or you're talking to your friends or your spouse or whomever, or work relationships. It comes out in so many different ways. And trauma, what I've learned throughout this process and in talking with people is that it doesn't matter where your trauma comes from.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you've been abused. It doesn't matter what type of abuse it is. It doesn't matter if you were a bully or if you've been bullied. It doesn't matter if you're a veteran. It doesn't matter if it's verbal abuse. There's so many ways that trauma impacts you. The impact is what's the same. So everyone I talk to, the impact is the same. It's the thoughts, it's the depression, it's the suicidal thoughts, it's anxiety and fear and PTSD. It's the same impact. And so that's really what I'm trying to get out now is, focus on not so much domestic violence, because that's where I was only focusing on, but it's really mental health and mental illness, and that's really the what I'm trying to get out with now.
Okay, so you said that this is not a self-help book.
It's not a self-help book.
It seems like it's a self-help book. What am I missing?
It's a story.
Well, it is a story, but how is this not a self-help book? I mean, in your mind, what is a self-help book, and how is your book different?
Thank you for that. Self-help book is a book that says, here's a problem, and you have a problem, and here's how you fix it. Yeah. I don't have solutions to how to fix things because I'm not an expert.
Okay.
I have my insight, I have my experiences, and I talk about those. But that's why I created the Everyday Being website. Because when I started telling my stories, I wanted to really get the message out as to what resources were out there. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, I can create a blogging platform and just talk about all the things that I did. But I didn't want to misinform anyone. Yeah. And I'm not an expert in meditation. I'm not an expert in therapy. I'm not an expert in hypnotherapy or yoga or all the tools that I used. And so I wanted to bring the experts in. So that's why I started having partnerships. And so that's where the self-help piece of it comes from my website. And it doesn't come from me directly. It comes from all the partners that I've partnered with.
Okay, and that website is again?
It's myeverydaybeing.com.
Myeverydaybeing.com.
Yeah.
And what is on that website that people could go and peruse and try and better their lives?
So the website has blogs. It's a blogging platform. And the blogs are written for helpful, inspirational ways to investigate resources that are out there. And
you write them?
I write most of the blogs. So, for instance, there's blogs on journaling and how I've used journaling, and some tips on how you could use journaling to address some of the issues that you're having in your life, whether it's grief or stress or anxiety or fear. And then there's other blogs about, understanding your expectations, and there's exercises that you can go through. So I write a lot of the blogs based on my experiences, but I also invite the partner resources to provide some of the blogs because they're the experts. And the blogs are there for anyone who's looking for healing. They can come and investigate the types of resources that are out there and how they could be used. And then they have the resources available that they can actually reach out to get more professional help if they were interested.
Okay. So it seems to me that what your book does, the non-self-help book that you've written that helps a lot of people, what it does is motivates people to, I'm going to say identify kind of the issue and potentially the trauma there, and then seek help. Is that right?
That's a very good understanding of the book.
Okay. So is that the call to action that you want people, as they read the book, as they go to your website, My Everyday Being, the call to action that you hope that people take from your experience, your story, and your website is that they don't bury the demons because that makes it worse?
Absolutely. I'm trying to get the word out that you need to address these demons because they will catch up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And until you're in a full, healthy state of mind, you may not know what that looks like, and you may think that you're surviving. But being in a full, healthy state of mind allows you to make better decisions in your life and allows you to move forward with your career, with your work relationships, with your home relationships, and just life, whatever your dreams are. It allows you to achieve those dreams because you're in a much healthier state of mind, and there's nothing that's really holding you back.
So again, I love what you just said, right? Because you can't achieve other dreams, you can't achieve your goals, you can't achieve your dreams unless, right, your headspace is right.
Absolutely.
Right? And again, that's why we have you on here talking about, again, wealth matters, right? Yeah, wealth is important, but you got to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
So that you can have a happy, fulfilling life, because that's what your dreams are about, right? Achieving those is hopefully going to lead to that happy, fulfilling life, but not if you're in the right space.
Absolutely.
All right, so a couple questions that I have. Out of everything that, from your low point till now, you've written this book, you've gotten your website out, you're obviously incredibly busy, you still have a great job. I don't know how you do it all, but do you still do, is there anything that you started and that you've stopped, or have you input the meditation, the yoga, clean eating, all of this, is that still in your life today?
Most of it is.
Yeah.
And it comes and goes. And that's the whole point of Everyday Being. It's Everyday Being is it's for those that don't have an hour to go to yoga class every day, right? So it's about finding those quick moments that you can fit in your well-being. So for me, Everyday Being is, if I'm having a stressful day at work, I go hide in an office somewhere and I listen to a really positive affirmation podcast. Or in the morning, I can do some yoga. The yoga, I go in and out of practice, so I do it every 6 months, and then I stop for 6 months, and then I go back to it. But knowing you have the tools there when you need them.
Yeah.
I can feel when my body's not at its optimum health, and then I can go back to start doing those practices.
And I think that's the key point, right?
Right.
Is that you're now self-aware enough that
Absolutely.
you can identify the issue and say, okay, what do I need to change to get back to point A, right? I'm maybe at point B,
Right.
but I want to get back to point A because I know how I felt mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally at point A. What's changed in my life? And that's the self-aware part, that unless you go through this journey, you're never going to have the ability to be self-aware enough to know what is my optimal person.
Absolutely, and I think about that on a regular basis. Even with the book and building the website, because I'm doing it all myself, and so you can very easily pick up what I call your addictions to tune out, right? And for me, it comes out of work sometimes. So I'm doing 100-hour work weeks between my regular job and this because I enjoy it so much. But knowing that I have to take a step back and say, okay, my reactions are not as positive as they used to be to other people. So I need to take a step back because I'm out of balance. And then pulling out those tools and resources that I'm familiar with, that I can use them to say, okay, here's how I get back on track so that I don't lose control.
Yeah. So I had a business coach, business mentor tell me, and this kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, that when we're in fear, right, those demons will eventually catch up to us. And he was saying that when we're running from fear, we eventually get tired and we can't keep that same pace up, right? So it's like the fear of running out of money, right? That's what you're focused on, is running out of money. Right? And that eventually drives you crazy, the running out of money. You can't, that's not an energy builder, it's an energy drainer.
Right.
So running from fear is a tiring cause. Right? It's just an energy sucker. But he said, you don't run from fear, you run to something. And that's what builds drive in people. Right? When you say, okay, here's my goals. I'm achieving or trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. And as you're driving and working your way towards that, as you get closer, that provides additional motivation to continue to go.
Absolutely.
Instead of running from, you're running to, and as you run to, that you end up doing more with less. Right? You're able to achieve your goals, and then you set even higher goals, and you keep that momentum. So it's a lot like a snowball going downhill. It just continues to build as you're going towards something. And that's what I'm picking up from our conversation today is
it's definitely true, because I feel the momentum is just picking up. And a year ago when I thought, I'm going to write my story, and now I'm building a whole business around it, and now I'm hoping to reach out to more people by telling my stories and getting the word out about mental health and the importance of being healthy. And these little things that I thought, I'm just going to write a book, what's going to happen, right? Or I'm just going to build a website, and it's just growing because I'm trying to get the word out, and I'm really enjoying touching people and letting them know that they can get help, and you can reach these goals. And it's surprising when you focus on the positive goals in your life instead of getting held back by the fear of what if I fail? What if my book does nothing? What if I don't sell any? What if I don't help people? Right? When you have those fears, you can't make progress and move forward.
Right. So one big thing that one question that I've wanted to ask is, how have your relationships in your life changed from this journey, from 10 years ago till now? What change have you seen in those relationships with your family, friends, coworkers, whomever in your life?
Definitely my kids. I have a much better relationship with my kids.
Yeah.
It took a lot of work.
Did it?
Yeah, it took a lot of work to have that relationship. They don't remember a lot of it, but
thankfully, huh?
Thankfully, but I do.
Yeah.
And it helps me be a better person to them. And then also that's the same with I'm in a new relationship. I'm married, remarried. It's a healthy relationship, and we can communicate, and we have respect for each other, and so I don't the challenges I talk about, the challenges are always going to be there. The challenges in relationships or work, or I have elderly parents, taking care of elderly parents. All the stresses in your life don't change.
Right.
They're always there, but what's important is how you react to them. And that's what's changed, and that's what's been most important. That's been the best benefit that I've seen.
Yeah. So it's how someone can learn how to react to outside situations. Not
Right.
saying this is making me mad. No,
Right.
it is affecting you, but you're choosing to be mad.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's
Okay.
a choice.
It's a choice.
You could still be mad.
Oh, totally.
You could still be mad and just choose not to react.
Exactly.
That's the
right.
difference.
Because being mad is a natural feeling.
Right.
And that's what we tell our kids. Like, I understand that your sister, I tell my son this all the time. I understand that your sister made you mad. That means you don't have to like act the way you're acting now.
Right.
Right? That's the choice that you're making. Right?
Right.
And that just grows into other areas of people's lives, right?
Right. One of the biggest shifts that I've had is I no longer think good versus bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a good thought or it's a bad thought, or you're a good person or you're a bad person. A complete mind shift is it positive or negative?
Yeah.
So is this person having a positive effect on me or a negative effect on me, and vice versa? Am I having a positive effect on my kids or a negative effect? Is this thought a positive thought and it's going to have a positive reaction in me, or a negative thought? So I've kind of dropped the good, bad and gone to positive, negative, and that's made a huge change in how I think about things.
That's fantastic. All right, so if people want to get a hold of your book, I mean, how do they do it?
You can go to my website, myeverydaybeing.com, and there's a link to go to Amazon.
Okay.
It's also available on Amazon.
Of course. I mean, it has to be, right?
Of course. It's coming out an ebook next month, but right now you can get a printed paperback copy. If you look for it for the Lotus Tattoo memoir, and then my book will show up and you can purchase a copy.
Fantastic. All right. So myeverydaybeing.com, and you had mentioned earlier about a charitable organization. What other organizations are you trying to reach, get your message out to? Who else are you trying to support, I guess, from this?
So right now we have 14 partners on the website.
Okay.
And there's a Reiki specialist. There's a woman who does Enneagrams, which is based on personality types, Renee Rosario. And she's interesting. She worked with the Narrative Enneagram prison project. And what they do is they go into prisons and they actually work on help prisoners discover their Enneagram type. And it really uncovers a lot of childhood impacts that they've had, some of it's abuse and where it comes from, and it really helps them out from that perspective. So she's a partner on the website. We have Cornerstone Health Community, which is their functional medicine team here in Denver, and they've helped me out a lot because eating healthy is a big part of it. I always think, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Is if you eat bad, it affects your mind, it affects your mental state. But if you're in a bad mental state, you're also going to eat unhealthy.
Yep.
So they're a partner as well. The Butterfly Project, which is based out of Houston, and they're also a domestic violence center. So if you go on the website, there's quite a few. There's 14 of them, and we're looking to expand. I say we, but it's just me. We're looking to expand for any type of organization that focuses on healing trauma, because I want to make sure that we're not just putting blogs out on, oh, here you can do yoga and it's going to help you, right? We want it to be focused on helping individuals overcome trauma.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. And so I'm going to be doing some workshops next year. I have quite a few that I'm working on. I did a talk for a group of veterans last month. Victory for Veterans is a group here in Colorado, and Warriors for Life is a virtual support group for veterans who suffer from PTSD and depression. And I did a talk called Releasing Guilt Without Feeling Guilty, which is a really interesting, really interesting and very relatable to the group that I was speaking with. And so I built a workshop out of that. And so I'm going to be teaching those around Denver next year. Okay,
so if people want to know your schedule, see when the workshops are going, myeverydaybeing.com.
Yes. myeverydaybeing.com.
All right. And the book again is?
The Lotus Tattoo, One Woman's Grit from Bully to Redemption.
Okay, on Amazon.
On Amazon.
All right, Marisa, thank you very much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And again, I hope everyone listening has seeing how this story, your story, not this story, but your story could have an impact in their lives, and people can finally say, you know what, maybe it is time that I get the courage to go talk to someone or think about something different, or how do I become a better, more rounded, optimal person. So this would be great. This is a self-help book in a way.
It's a book about mental illness and trying to get people to talk about it so that we can lose the stigma around it, because it's a big problem, and everyone talks about it, but only at the surface. No one really takes action. And that's what I'm hoping, that people take action.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for being here today. I honestly think that this is something that this affects everyone's lives somehow, some way. We all have trauma. And if we can be a better, happier person, right, then we can set goals, we can run to those goals, give us energy, and hopefully live that fulfilling life full of dreams that we've always wanted.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Marisa, for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Much success to you and your book and all your workshops, and we will look forward to your cookbook
coming
out next year.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Marisa.
All right. Thanks, Christian.